I cannot believe how unbelievably indifferent people here can be. It's not just a Trump problem, it's not just a MAGA problem, it's not just a Republican problem. This is an American problem. It was left to right indifference about what was happening to Canada. Not unanimous indifference, but grotesquely majority indifference. Wake up. Seriously. This is actually embarrassing. For every one American that went to No Kings, 48 didn't. If 1 in 5 American adults had put in a full hour of actual effort this whole year combined, I'd be surprised. I don't expect Americans to stand up for Canada, or for Greenland, or for Venezuela, or for Nigeria, or for Cuba, or for Colombia, or for the EU, or for anyone else, because they don't even stand up for their own country. Since before I was born, the American media, politicians, and so forth, they've been beating the world over the head with just constant braggadocious self-flating, where they talk about themselves as oh, we are the shining city on a hill, we are the great beacon of liberty and freedom that all people around the world aspire to be like, or at least they should. And the first time they get an actual full-on autocrat in office, 90% of this country folds like a bunch of cheap accordions. When the South Korean leader a couple of years ago declared martial law, the South Koreans had that shut down by the end of the weekend. He was in jail shortly after. In Brazil, when Bolsonaro pulled his own January 6th, they locked him up, banned him from ever running again, and he's going to be in jail for 30 years. Why are South Koreans and Brazilians so much better at being American than Americans? I want this to be a land of values and principles and ideals, not of biological and geographical happenstance. I want America to live up to its lofty ideals, or at least make the vaguest effort of pretending like you're trying to. I am tired of American exceptionalism being that the American who actually cares about the American ideals is the exception. So this is my second video responding to people that I pissed off with my interview with Jay a few weeks ago. The first response was put out less than a week ago, and it addressed how I ever came to support Trump in the first place, though I clearly do not anymore. In this video, I'm going to be talking about, in responding to those Americans who were pissed off about the many critical things I had to say about the states. So let's get into it. You just saw some of the clips that annoyed them. So one response I got from more than several Americans was, lots of Americans are fighting. Now, this is certainly true in absolute numbers. Yeah, there are totally millions of Americans who are fighting. But this is a country of 341 million people. There are also millions of stamp collectors in America, and probably a few million pedophiles, and a few million people missing at least one toe or finger. But none of this is to comment on what is typical and standard in this country. And in the case that I'm talking about here is that most Americans are plainly doing absolutely nothing. Now, the Americans that have been getting upset at me, I think, are actually the Americans that I have a great deal of respect for. And so I want to talk to you Americans that actually are doing something. Let me be remarkably clear about this. I have nothing but respect for you and gratitude for you. When I was still there, you guys were people that helped me keep something vaguely resembling not complete insanity. So genuinely, thank you. But so of that segment of the population that's actually trying, that was upset with my video, I'm just going to make a suggestion that, why are you mad at me for pointing out that most of your neighbors are not like you? They are not being the heroes you're being, because make no mistake about it, you are being heroes. Here's what you are doing. You are standing up, even though you know the staggering, overwhelming majority of Americans are not standing up. That means that you have this ready excuse to do nothing, given that almost none of your neighbors are doing anything, proportionally speaking, but you're not taking the excuse. You now have to work significantly harder in order to get significantly less done, while taking greater risk to yourself, all because of your useless neighbors and you're doing it anyway. So you have nothing but my great respect. But I want to ask you, if you're upset with me for pointing out the unobjectionable truth that most Americans are doing absolutely nothing, why aren't you mad like me at them? Another comment I've gotten is that I'm a coward. I left America. So who am I to point out those useless majority of Americans that are doing nothing when I picked up and left like a coward? Well, I am Canadian, so let me ask you, why the hell would I stay in America when your president has been lying about, disrespecting, bullying, deliberately trying to harm in order to annex us against our will, and the staggering, overwhelming majority of Americans have done absolutely nothing? Bipartisan. That does not mean that there aren't millions of Americans that have responded pretty much the way a lot of Canadians would have wanted them to. But it remains the case that the staggering, overwhelming majority of Americans have not and will not lift a single finger to help Canadians or anybody else outside of their immediate social circles until it hurts them personally, up to and including Gavin Newsom, who did not have a single word to say in support of Canada until the tourism dollars stopped coming in. Not just him, though. You can just go back to the day when the tariffs came into effect in March. That same evening, Trump spoke in DC to the Senate and Congress and other invited guests. Not a single, not one person in that entire building had a single gesture toward Canada. Not a Democrat, not a Republican, not an invited guest. Nobody. Not a Canadian lapel pin, not a single word, not one in support of Canada. So why would I want to stay there? And second of all, if you are upset with me, a Canadian, for not fighting for your country, shouldn't you be infinitely madder at the staggering, overwhelming majority of Americans who could not be bothered to lift the first finger under absolutely any circumstances until it affects them personally? I was also accused of not doing anything myself, and this is just flat out not true. So first off, even my leaving is a massive action. I left the country. That is the ultimate voting with your feet. I, on top of that, have taken a 30% pay cut, not even factoring in conversion, to live in a place that costs more than twice as much, where the weather is worse for several health conditions I have, and I did it anyway, and I am doing it publicly. That is a statement. I have also nearly fully divested from the United States and redistributed that money to investments in Canada, Europe, Asia, gold, silver, so forth. I'm selling my house. That is lowering the property value slightly, and I'm bringing all of that money back to Canada. I'm a healthcare worker who will no longer be serving America. I was a taxpayer who will no longer be paying taxes into America. That is a major set of actions I've taken at the level of an individual. In terms of what one regular individual can do, that's a lot. And likewise, if an American leaves America, I don't view it as cowardice. I view it as voting with their feet and saying, I am no longer going to be paying taxes into this nonsense. Another thing that some Americans have said to me is that there's really not much we can do until we can vote, but we're going to vote. And that's not even remotely true. And it's one thing that's it's been interesting is to have had several Americans over the past year ask me, what can I do? And there's something quite amazing about an American asking a Canadian how to do American civics. I have given a series of recommendations, though. One is you can go to protests. You can make it so that instead of 98% of Americans not going to No Kings, maybe only 97% don't go. You can bring friends with you. that wouldn't have gone otherwise. That's what I did. I went to No Kings on October 18th, and I brought someone with me that wouldn't have ordinarily gone if I didn't invite them. You can write your representatives, your senators, your congresspeople, and so forth. You can go to town halls. Some Americans have done this, and that's fantastic. You can change your purchasing habits to move away from companies that support this administration, and then you can publicly declare that you're doing this and why you're doing this, encourage others to do it, and you can write these companies themselves. You can sign up for mailing lists for organizations that actually are opposing these kind of things, like 5051 and organizations like that. You can donate to organizations. Critically, you can break that taboo of talking politics in public. You can speak out against this. It doesn't mean you have to do it constantly, but how about one Facebook post every 2 weeks or so? Something like that. You can vote in your primaries so that you actually get candidates worth voting for. You can create and share relevant online content. Here's just something to think about. Imagine if just 60 million Americans, that is, just factor in like the adult population that don't have disabilities. What is that? Like maybe a quarter of the population. If 60 million Americans, were to commit to dedicating a total of 4 to 5 hours total every 60 days combined, that would be enough so that there could be a 1 million person protest every single day. And with plenty of time left over to write senators, write congresspeople, put posts online, start conversations, do other things. Imagine what kind of a message that would send. There is so much Americans can do that they are not doing. And once more, to those Americans who are acting, you have nothing but my respect. You are heroes. I just wish you didn't have to do this with so little help, because you need the help and you deserve the help. Thanks.